computer, I'm going to say. All right, it wants to know where I'm recording. All right, everybody. Welcome to CLC The Early Days, our talk story here, celebrating our 40th anniversary. And we have with us Bud Jenkins and Sally Keno and Eileen Ward and Linda Santos, who have been either founding members or came along not too long after the church was organized on April 13th, 1980, if I remember correctly. And what we're doing is simply talking story and doing sort of a low-key celebration that we can get away with in a pandemic era, and still give thanks to God and celebrate and remember the stories as we move forward in these challenging times. So a couple things, as I did with the pastors last Sunday during the round robin sermon, I'm going to ask you all a memory or a cherished moment from your time here at Christ Lutheran Church. Maybe an obstacle or challenge that the church faced and that you were a part of and how that turned out. And then how you think God has been working through Christ Lutheran Church all these years and how God might continue to work through the church as we move into the next 40. So I'm going to throw that out to you. Who would like to share a story or memory or
I'll start because this is probably one of the very, very earliest. Well, that's not true. You guys probably have some earlier, but I moved to Mililani in late of 1976, and had been worshiping at a church downtown, not a Lutheran church, and was outside doing chores or something, and this very nice man came up to me and introduced himself as Pastor Smith, who was starting a Lutheran church. And being born, raised, have a Lutheran church, a Lutheran minister brother, it was just like very, very timely for me. So I started going, and I guess we were meeting in the band room then.
of the high school?
Yes.
Okay. How many people?
I'll jump in there for a second. We had a newspaper in Mililani called Kanu Pepa, and it wasn't some pigeon slang thing. That was actually the Hawaiian word for newspaper, Kanu Pepa. And there was an article in there. And my son was born about then, and mom was visiting from Wisconsin. So we called Pastor Smith and said, we'd like to have Doug baptized. And he said, well, you know, in order to be baptized, there really should be a group to accept him into the group, into the congregation. So we had a church service in the front room at the parsonage. Sally, I don't remember if you or Linda were there.
No, I wasn't.
I don't remember who was there. I can't remember the name of the woman that did the articles for Kanu Pepa. Sorry, my memory is totally shot. But Doug was baptized in the front room at the parsonage on Ia Place. It was the first, I call it the first actual group meeting of Christ Lutheran Church. But Doug's baptismal certificate shows Maluhia Lutheran Church in Waianae because we weren't organized. We couldn't have a baptism.
How many were there, do you think? Was it just a dozen or?
I'm guessing 20, 25.
Okay.
It was a nice sized group, and I think many of them eventually then came into the first meetings of the church itself. But Pastor Smith tried hard. He was working hard at it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sally or Eileen, go ahead.
Well, I came by invitation of one of my fellow Girl Scout, I guess it was Brownie at that time, parents, who said, oh, it's a nice church, it's real comfortable, and they weren't regulars, but they wanted their child in Sunday school, and she said, no problem. You don't have to go if you don't want to. You can just drop the kids off. And no, I don't, that's not what I'm looking for. But then I went to what was being offered to the community, and it was probably advertising Kanu paper. I was reading in an article in my scrapbook today, Bud. And they had announced that Christ Lutheran Church was hosting several sessions on parenting with basically a video and some discussion afterwards. And I think it was held in Rec Center 3. I'm not sure, I don't remember where, but I remember going to it faithfully for several weeks. And then when it was over, I said, yeah, I'm gonna go worship. And it was a wonderful experience. This was Rec 3, and that's where I started. I didn't get the privilege of Rec 2 and the band room, but yeah, that was August. And then first class, we attended the first new members class that they offered after that, and it was September. So I joined the church in September. Was that 4 months after the organization in April? Yeah. And lovely memories of the Rec 3 experience. And at that time, I was first a volunteer and then part-time paid staff. And Kahalelana was my office, if you would. And yeah, I restored the baptismal fonts and all the other things that are needed at worship every week and carried it back and forth and the stand and all. So, and I think it was a different stand because this one was built when our current church was built. And I think it was a heavier thing to carry than what we have now.
This one isn't too heavy. Do you know what happened to the older baptismal font? Anybody? Has anybody
Well, we sold the property to the Episcopal Church. Maybe they have it.
Okay.
I don't know, but that's a good thought.
Well, Kahalelana was that the house you worshipped in, or? Okay.
Yeah, right adjacent to the
Rec 3.
Rec 3. Yep.
Okay. Okay. And that's been
Go back a little farther than that. Let's go back a little farther
Yeah,
than that.
yeah.
Do you want to pick it up, or do you want me to, Sally?
Yeah, probably you.
Well, I remember worshiping at Rec 2, and Harold Anderson built that wooden box with wheels. And did he take it home every week? I'm not sure, but I got rolled in on Sunday morning, and we opened it up, and our hymnals were in there, and the altar stuff. And was it our altar too? I don't know if we used it as the altar.
I don't know. We might have just
we
used the
needed.
table.
I remember setting up
farther
the
than that.
Rec Center chairs, emptying the closet of the chairs and then putting them back afterwards. But,
Yeah, so there was a lot of setup in those
Yep.
days too.
If we go back a little farther than Rec 2 even, we actually met in the chorus room at the high school.
right.
I was teaching at the high school, so I picked up the key every Friday afternoon, and because it was the chorus room, we had the chairs were there and the piano was there. So we didn't have quite as much stuff to move back and forth. We still had to move the hymnals and stuff, but then when we moved from the chorus room to Rec 2, yeah, then Harold and Barbara, he had a pickup truck that he would put the organ in the back of. We had the organ that was dragged down to Rec 2 and the, Sally, as you mentioned, and the hymnals and all that kind of stuff. The chairs were there for Rec 2, so we were okay that way. And that lasted for a while. Then we went to Rec 3. And after we had worshiped at Rec 3 for a little while, the house next door to it that we called the Ark, Kahalelana, opened up for sale. I was a realtor at the time, so I negotiated the sale of that. I don't remember if I was on the church council at that time. I've been on church council like, I don't know, 5 times
Most
or
of
something.
your life.
Yeah. So I was the realtor that negotiated that. So my commission I used to buy tables and chairs for Kahalelana. And the tables that we bought are not like our tables today. Our tables today, the nice lightweight fiberglass ones, they were made out of wood. They were the press board with Formica top. They were nice tables, but boy, they were heavy. So I don't know, I bought like 8 tables and maybe 40 chairs. They were vinyl covered padded chairs that were nowhere near as long lasting as our fiberglass ones are today. Those fiberglass chairs will last forever. These things lasted for a while, and then the vinyl started to tear and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, there might still be a couple left, I don't know. But that was at Kahalelana, and yeah, Eileen, that was your home place when you joined us, Eileen, yeah?
So you started out at you started in the house with Pastor Smith, and then went to Rec 2, Rec 3, Kahalelana.
The high school.
Chorus room.
Chorus room,
Chorus.
Rec 2, Rec 3, Kahalelana. And where in there did you start? Where in there did you get organized? Where was 1980 and all that? Do you remember? Was it one of the rec centers?
I think it was Rec 2.
Okay.
I think we're at Rec 2. I think you're right, Sally. Pastor Dale, I think, came in about then. Pastor Smith tried for a couple of years and started off strong, but then kind of tapered off. Pastor Dale came in and went gangbusters and did a fantastic job of organizing us.
But I'm clear on Rec 3 when I first started worshiping, and that was September of 1980. So, and I think, yeah, there was discussion of just having recently moved in there. So,
I remember that my older son was about 2 when Brian Burke was born, and that was in Rec 2. I remember the Sunday that after he was born very clearly.
Okay, so the organization probably happened in Rec 2, and then you moved not long after that to Rec 3. Okay.
Sounds like it. Sounds like it.
Well, it's interesting that the way you're remembering all this is by when your kids were born.
All our kids grew up in the church.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Well,
if we carry on from there,
yeah.
After the chorus room, Rec 2, Rec 3, and Rec 3 was our worship site. Kahalelana was like for the Sunday school classes and evening classes, evening meetings, and that kind of stuff. We had Kahalelana available for us there. At some point here, Division for Missions in North America of the ELCA came in. Well, they were the ones that bought the parsonage, probably in 75 or 76, something like that. And then they came in after that and negotiated with Castle and Cook for 2 acres of land in former pineapple fields. You gotta picture Mililani now about this time frame. Mehi'ula Parkway went from Kamehameha Highway to the high school entrance. That was all. It was a 2-lane road that went from Cam Highway to the high school. And we could stand on my classroom up in the top floor, the second floor of B building, the only building, and we could look out across open, fallow pineapple fields and see the ocean and see Diamond Head. There was no shopping center. There were no homes there. And we could look to the left. We could look to the northeast and say, we have 2 acres over there someplace in the field. And then, of course, as Mililani grew, the rec centers grew. We became Rec 4 and Rec 5 and Rec 6, but at some point there, Mehi'ula Parkway grew. The shopping center came up, and now we knew where our land was for sure. We hired, the council hired an architect, Bob Tsushima. Bob was a Christian. Bob was a Catholic, and put together the plans for our church, for our structure, for the sanctuary. Our sanctuary is a very unusual design in that, most buildings have 4 walls with windows in them and a few doors. So the structure itself is kind of rigid. Well, we have 2 pillars, doors on 3 sides, and 1 wall. And if you look at it a little bit, that's kind of an unstable structure. So our design, that 1 wall, the front of the church, is called a shear wall. It's built from 2x12s, 2 of them together, so it's double 2x12s, 12 inches on center, so that front wall is about 90% wood. Then they sheathed both sides of it with 3/4 inch plywood before they put the siding on the outside and the drywall on the inside. So Pastor Dale one day said, it really would be good if our church, if our congregation could build the building. So we went over, Sally, you may have some of those photos. We went over with, I don't know, 100 people, 200 people, I don't remember. The carpenter's crew sort of cleared out the area pretty good, trying to make it safe. And we went over with a bunch of hammers and nails, and everyone nailed into that wall, nailed the plywood onto that front wall, and then signed them. We had a bunch of nails and signatures and hundreds and hundreds of nails in that. I mean, there was a nail every.
My kids were young.
Those nails all have been holding that side up quite well.
Well,
did you nail some
actually,
of that? Linda and Eileen and
I think it was a Mother's Day celebration that was happening, that we gathered. And I have a picture of the congregation picture when we processed, and that was Palm Sunday for groundbreaking, I guess it was. So, yeah, there are
I have
pictures
pictures
out there.
too, with the
What year
shovel
was that?
turning the dirt over.
Right.
What year?
Oh, I don't remember the dates.
the cornerstone says
It was
87.
started in-
Was it
86, finished in 87, something like
Yeah.
that.
that sounds about right, 85 and 86. The Department of Education was nice enough to grant me a sabbatical that semester. So while the church was being built, I was on the construction, I was on the committee, the building committee, and I was able to be there like 4 or 5 days a week for at least a couple hours or an hour or whatever. It was great. Charlie Meyer, Rick's dad, was the chair of the committee and did an outstanding job of leading the committee as we moved on through the planning process with Bob Tsushima and input from much of the congregation. And then Charlie stepped down, and I'm not sure if at that point, if he was not feeling well or what. Charlie stepped down, and Lon Kilmer, Lynn and Lonnie Kilmer, who after that they moved to Las Vegas, but Lon took over next as the next building committee chair. And then when Lon moved, I was the building committee chair. So my fingers are all over that thing too. Now that the plywood we nailed on, there's a story that goes with that too, that I don't know how many people I've shared it with. The carpenters, the carpenter crew we had were a bunch of surfers from the North Shore. So if the surf was up, sometimes we didn't get any work done at the church. It would, they just wouldn't show up. But sometimes they would show up, and that the roof on that church is kind of steep. When they put the plywood up, they would go up on the roof occasionally and try to surf down the roof with they grab a piece of board, a 2x12, and try to stand on the board and surf down the roof. I was scared to death that they were going to hit the flat part of the roof and then go over the edge, and we were going to lose some of our carpenters, and it was going to slow down the process. But carpenter surfers was what we had to do it. after we all went in and nailed the plywood on and they started to put on the drywall, they saw that there was a series of studs that were warped. So there was a belly in the wall. There was like a bubble that stuck out of the wall. So they had to pull a couple of the sheets of plywood off, plane the studs down so that it would come out flat and straight. And of course, some of the pieces they had to put off were the ones that we nailed 300 times into the studs. So they told me they had a difficult time getting the plywood off, and then they had to put it back on. So some of the plywood it's different than what it was when we did it. But they were able to get it so that front wall is smooth, so it didn't have the belly in it like it would have had. And then Eileen, you were talking about the processional and the actual moving into the church. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or Sally or Linda?
We
I remember
started in the high school parking lot, right?
I don't remember.
Like at the
Something
front.
the dirt, or is this when we opened up?
Oh,
But
this is the picture still at the dirt at the corner there.
Okay.
But opening up, I'm not remembering at the moment exactly how that happened.
I remember something because by then I had 2 children, one a bit of a handful, and I remember him running around. He was, I think, 2, running around and all with all the excitement and stuff of opening the church. And both of my sons were then there, but I don't remember what. If he was 2, that was. I can't remember when he was born. Okay.
Okay, so the kid thing only goes so far. Yeah.
Right.
Research that.
Right.
Okay, but you were there for the dedicate. I think we're talking about the dedication of
Yes.
the building then, right?
If we go back a little bit before the dedication,
Yeah.
the building was turned over to us on a Friday, I believe. So on Saturday, we got all the men and we were moving in chairs and that kind of stuff. And we were going to have service the next day. We were going to have service Sunday. So the carpenters had built the platforms. Those were originally built by the carpenters. They built the altar piece. At that point, I think we had the baptismal font. They built the baptismal font. I bought the big koa calabash that goes with it as the font itself. But we were putting it together and we said, okay, we're going to have service here Sunday morning. We have service tomorrow. And we looked around and what are we missing? What do we have to have that? And Art Christensen and I looked around and said, we don't have a cross. We need a cross. Well, we had the little 2x3, I think, little cross that we have that we still use. But somebody said, we really should have a cross before we have our service. So Art went home and got his tools, and I went down to Martin and MacArthur and bought some koa, and we put together the cross that hangs in the front of the church. We put it up there. It
Remember
hangs
that.
on, it hangs on one piece. It hung on one piece of suji, one piece of 50-pound monofilament fish line from the beam up on top that held it up. And the story that goes along, I mean, we built it that afternoon and we stained it and finished it and hung it up there. And we had a cross at our first service. Sometime after that, I don't know if it was a couple of weeks or Pastor Dale used to sit right under the cross. Pastor Dale and the assisting minister would sit right under the cross. Well, one day we came in and the cross, the fishing line that held it up had let go. And the cross came down and went right through the seat of the chair that Pastor Dale sat on. I mean, right through. And okay, we need a new piece of fishing line. So we went up, we hung it up again, and this time we put 3 lines up, one straight up and one to each side to hold it in place. So now there are 3. I don't think that fishing line has ever been replaced.
Well, there's my question. As the current
Pastor
pastor,
Dale.
he does not sit under that cross because he
Yeah.
has heard this story.
Well, Pastor Dale moved the chair right back under the cross. I says, no. You can't sit under that cross. I trust the fishing line, but I cherish you more. You can't sit under the cross. So now he sat off to the side. And then I don't know how many years later we put that shelf, the table shelf underneath of that. So no one's sitting there now. But that's what happened. That's how the cross came to be. And that was our very first service in the building.
Was that 83?
It'd have to be later than
No.
that, wouldn't it?
I think
Oh,
it
no,
would have been after
85.
that.
I'm sorry, 85.
That could be. That
Yeah,
could
I
be.
think it was 85.
Because if we dedicated in, what did you say, Pastor, 87?
Well, I think the cornerstone says 1987. So did that go in later?
Well, we met in there for a while before we actually dedicated it and built the building and got the cornerstone,
Okay.
which is,
I want to say
Which
we
is-
had the luau in 1986. Does that sound?
okay,
So,
that sounds good.
And there was a procession. We had all the pastors on the island here, and they were all dressed up in their fancy robes, and they processed in, and we were all there. We had guests from all over the island, and we set up a big luau tent in the next to the parking lot, and we had music and one thing Russ and I remember is there was a lady, I don't know if she was from Germany, where she was from. I can't remember her name. And she came in, she says, I can do a fire eating act for you. And she did, and she was in a two-piece bathing suit, and she probably was 50 or 60. And it was just like, we were all in shock because I'm sure the president of the synod was there. I mean, there was a lot of important people there, and she came out in that outfit, and she did okay, right? She was a fire, she ate fire,
yeah,
right?
I was on the committee that put together some of these festivities, and she came volunteering herself, and I said, oh no, this is not going to look good. I don't think the powers that be above Dale and the Synod are going to appreciate this. So what we ended up doing was saying yes to her, but saying surprise act, and did not tell him. So in my looking around, I found a picture of the Synod bishop and his wife sitting there watching this. But they were fine with it. I mean, it was a one-time thing, and Dale didn't dream it up. So
Cultural.
Yeah.
Cultural.
yeah.
Oh,
Was Pastor Dale's dad bishop at that time? Pastor Dale's dad was also a minister, but high ranking at some point. And I'm wondering, was he bishop then?
he was
Is
a
he the
bishop
one
of
who
the
sent us
LCA.
Pastor Dale?
Yeah, that Southern California Synod. I'm not sure what the official name of it was, but
It was Bishop Miller in the picture that I was looking at, Robert Miller. And
Okay.
yeah,
At that time, were we still ELCA?
you were LCA until 88.
yeah,
So you
LCA.
got the loan and the startup help from the Lutheran Church in America.
right.
I attended Lutheran Church of Honolulu after I got married, so back in like 1973. And Dale's dad came, I'm sure he was the bishop, and came and did some worship things at that church when I was attending.
Oh, at LCH.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was,
Outstanding.
I can say 73 to 76, I was worshiping there. And they told me they were opening up the mission in Mililani. So I said, well, that's great, because I drive 25 miles a day to go to work 5 days a week. So if I don't have to drive that far on Sunday morning, it's good for me.
So you heard about it through somebody at Lutheran Church of Honolulu.
Yeah.
Pastor Dale didn't knock on your door first or anything. Okay. So you're not one of the 3,000 or 4,000 that he, I think that's what he said. He figured he had 3,000 or 4,000 doors he knocked on. Yeah, in those first few months. So
Do you guys remember when we knocked on doors and passed out maps of Mililani town? All the
Indeed.
churches, all the churches got together and somebody printed up the maps, and the churches in Mililani knocked on doors and passed out those maps.
Yeah.
And I remember what the pastor that was at Presbyterian at the time lived in my complex. And he was there with his people too, and they were passing out. So we met people from other churches doing that.
In essence, they paired us up. So there was 2 people going to each door, not just leaving something, but ringing the bell, hoping somebody would answer and engaging them a little bit, like, do you have a church home? And here's several denominations to choose from. And here's our map. And in it at that time, they were printed by MTA, I'm pretty sure. And they had all the church schedules in there. So it was pretty nice church and city work or something. So yeah, good experience. I think I had a number of good experiences, and more than one are because of we were part of a larger group, not just us the Lutherans in Mililani trying to make it happen. Like I was remembering Easter sunrise service at the high school stadium, and that was many denominations of Mililani. I don't think too far beyond Mililani, but the Baptists sure can sing. And but yeah, it was really, really good to have everybody together in such a large and singing out loud, and we weren't worried about COVID or anything. And yeah, that happened for I don't know how many years, 3 or 4 that I remember going to. I don't know if it was long beyond that, but yeah.
Any other stories or thoughts or moments? Sally, when did the show start? The talent show. You had talked about that.
Back when we were at Rec 3, so we had the stage there.
Okay.
We had various entertainments over the years, and it was called a talent show in the beginning.
A
And
talent
then
show.
as time went on, everybody says, well, what is the prize? What is the prize? So Russ said, change it to variety show so they won't ask about what the prize is. We've had all kinds of, I think Bud, your nephew, he had a paper bag over his head, and he was doing a comedy act, telling jokes. And I forgot what he called the name of his act. And then my daughter took hula. So I told her she had to dance hula at every variety show we had. She had to dance hula at the couple of luau's that we had in the church parking lot. Because we had more than one luau. We had the dedication. I don't know, was it the 10th anniversary?
That was a luau, yeah.
That was a luau too. And then I'm not sure if we had another one later on. I remember a lot of people from different churches on the grass out there.
I remember having a lot that we had the for the kids, the jumping things out there.
Oh, the house, kind of those
Yeah.
bounce houses or whatever.
Bounce
they were.
houses, yeah, or whatever they were, yeah.
Now that was that before the fences were up and the preschool was in, or when did that happen later? Hi, Gary.
Hi, I got one for you.
All right, let's hear it.
I used to support going over to Kalapapa. In fact, the organ that came out of there was shipped over there for their church.
That's true.
But more important than that, if you want to believe in God, your people, I forget who, but Snyder.
Roger Snyder.
He would fly over there with the congregation, and they would nail things on the roof or sew for the lepers and do all the stuff. But the most amazing thing was he flew there once with my wife, which helped me believe in God,
And my mom.
and her mom, and he forgot to put the landing gear down. So he did a low approach into their runway, and just as the prop hit the ground, he went around, which he shouldn't have done. And he actually went around, dropped the gear, and landed. And when he landed, all of the props were bent like this. And as a pilot, that's impossible. So God had to be watching him, because there's no way in the world that that thing could have possibly gone around and landed uneventfully. And here's the witness, she's still here. So amazing. But you guys used to do fantastic work for the lepers over there in Colorado. Hanson.
Yeah.
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 Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
That's
And-
One of
And
of our
I'm the guy who started the Amazon
Smiles.
Smile to get you guys some extra money.
oh,
Thank you.
okay, good. Thank you. You're the one who signed us up. Okay.
I started that whole thing, and I couldn't convince anybody to go collect the money. So we were accumulating money, and nobody wanted to go get the money. And then finally, I believe Colette or somebody finally, almost finally collected the money for it. So, but what a great idea, huh? For the price of free, why not?
We've had a couple large amounts show up. We've had a few $100s or so. I mean, close to 1,000, I think, come through.
So I tend to help people fixing their Macintosh computers, and every time I go there, I change their default on their Amazon to your CLC. So there's all kinds of people who have no idea they're contributing to you.
Well, they will now. This is being recorded. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Oh, that's a good story. Okay. I'm going to tell everybody they need to take their Macs to Gary so that he can switch their Amazon account. Okay. Any other stories? We got about 20 minutes still. What were some of we've talked about a lot of the joys in the beginning. What were some of the challenges, if we put it that way? I know the mortgage was a challenge, wasn't it? That's probably been the big one, but.
I think that was later. I think early on, the mortgage wasn't as much of a challenge. We had a good sized congregation. It came a point, the biggest challenge for me, and I hate to admit it this way, I stopped making friends with people in the church, because they would come, they would be there for a year or two, and they would leave. And we ended up saying goodbye to so many people that were good friends, because that's just the nature of the beast here in Hawaii, and especially in Mililani. People would join us. They would be very, very valuable parts of our congregation, integral parts, and they would leave. So it became difficult for me. That was my biggest challenge, was to welcome people and then say goodbye to people.
How about Linda, Sally, Eileen?
It was a big challenge, and it wasn't always the military.
Ah.
It was other families, and maybe because they wanted to be closer to their relatives on the mainland, or they retired and it was too expensive to live here. And I mean, I still keep in touch with your former neighbor, Virginia Johnson, Linda. I keep in touch with her, and she's in Oregon, and the Stockers, and there's another family. I don't know if you guys remember, what was their name? Lila Tackett, Ray and Lila Tackett. They were members at the, when we met at the Choral Room. And then they left the church because it was cheaper to have their kids at Trinity Lutheran. So they pulled out, but they eventually, because they were military, they left. And when I was a new mother, Lila used to call me up and say, bring your baby over. I would drop the baby off and have the afternoon off, and
Wow.
she would watch Kyle, and I really needed it. It was something special.
Yeah.
And we still keep in touch at Christmas.
Yeah, those are the kind of relationships that are are valuable and cherished. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right, Sally. It wasn't just the military people. I mean, John and Virginia, the Johnsons, taught here in Hawaii for 30 years and then retired and decided they could live cheaper elsewhere. And, or maybe they wanted to be near their kids or what, I don't know. But they were gone, and it became a problem for me.
Well, you
And
know,
I think it was for kids, it was both generations that people left for. I believe the Johnsons, Juliet was on the mainland, but one of the two had a parent still alive and, needed to be near that person.
well, just in the 7.5 years I've been here, it's not just the military who have come in and out, and I've gotten close to, so I know what you're talking about. Even in the last 7-8 years, this is the toughest thing in this church for me, is saying goodbye to people, that I welcomed. And then and that was military, but then some of our kupuna that I thought would never, ever leave did go.
Yeah, recently.
In my,
Yeah, indeed is.
yeah. And it's like, yeah, I'm like, oh, I can't handle this. So, Bud, and Sally, you were kind of tearing up there thinking about folks you cherish. I've cheered up a few times. I think there was a Sunday that it got to me. I can't remember. It was a few years ago. But I just remembered suddenly everybody who wasn't at the 10 a.m. service. And I'm like, oh, the 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. turned 8 a.m. has sort of stayed steady. But wow, I marvel at the transitory nature of the membership here.
And I think that's part of being in Hawaii is, those of us that are Lutherans are by and large transplants, or I mean, at one point, the census of Hawaii was 0.5% is Lutheran. And that was a comment that was made when we were looking at taking out our mortgage for the church, when the church was being built, when the structure was being built, was someone from I don't know, DMNA or one of the groups on the mainland said, this church will never be self-sufficient. We shouldn't even give them a mortgage. We should just give them the property because they will never be self-sufficient. Well, we proved them wrong, but you're right. There were some tough years in there with John Newton. John was treasurer, and we were talking one day, and I said, so how are we doing on the mortgage? And he says, I haven't paid it for many months. I said, what do you mean? He says, we're $50,000 in the hole on the mortgage that I haven't paid $50,000 that we owe. That must have been maybe 2000 when the bishop brought his Jubilee 2000 in, and there were 4 churches in the synod that were having that same problem. And I see Eileen nodding. She probably remembers the facts better than I do, but there were 4 churches that were all in the hole, and many of them were expensive churches in expensive areas that just simply didn't have the population to support them.
I heard there was $250,000 in 2000. We were in arrears $250,000, and the bishop raised $1 million. There are 4 churches that were each about $250,000, and we were the biggest of the 4 $250,000s. We were like 260 or something like that. But that they raised $1 million in the Jubilee year and caught us all up, and that we have not been behind since then. So in the last 20 years, this church has really worked hard at reducing that mortgage and keeping it current. Is that your experience, the rest of you? Is that sort of, was that one of the things that seemed to hang over the heads from your perspective? Or
I used to send two different females that from what was that organization called that held our mortgage anyway, to help us know how to do better in reducing it.
and to do some financial campaign. They were here to help us,
Right. Yes.
help us raise more money.
I remember
Yes.
we had a lot of financial campaigns in those years.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we're around, I think, isn't it we're down from 1.3 million to under $300,000. So when I got here 8 years ago, it was still 750,000. And just before I got here, Pastor Dave had extracted that matching grant from Mission Investment Fund, where they would match up to 150,000 over those 3 years. And I mean, to his credit, he was tenacious enough to get that, because they don't give it out anymore. After he was done with them, they stopped giving that matching grant out. I think he left them kind of in shock. So, but yay. And we were able to match 120 of it and knock back our mortgage $240,000 over and above the monthly mortgage payment.
Oh, Pastor Dave, I think I was on the council then too. Pastor Dave, when he took a look at our financial situation, said, we borrowed $1.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
We have already paid them $1.8 million. We don't need to pay him anymore. I'm calling him and telling him, we're not paying him anymore. We paid him enough already. That may have been why they decided to do that matching thing to keep him quiet. I don't know.
Yeah. They had that for a few years, but they had never advertised it, because I was looking on their website to see if we could do it again when it was done. And I called them up and they went, I could see them going, no, we don't do that anymore. You were the last ones, and that was enough. So that was, that's an obstacle we've overcome. And I think we're well on the way, knock on wood, but we're on the way to, it's not an issue anymore. I think we just keep paying it, and God has been good. And then we've got the physical campus with the preschool and the Kidney Foundation and soon the cell phone tower. It's going to be self-sustaining physical campus. And I think that's going to be something we have that very few churches in the United States have, is a self-sustaining campus. So our goal then is going to be, how do we do God's ministry in the community through the campus, but through the people who come here and worship? How do we do that? We're a lot smaller. If I look at the numbers right, we're a lot smaller. So in the midst of a pandemic, Linda, Sally, Eileen, and Bud, what do you think God is calling us to? This is a little more future, and we don't have to have a mission, vision, and value statement emerge here, but what might be God asking us to do in these very different times? Knowing our history, how we got here, what might God be wanting us to have at next? We got about 5-8 minutes left.
Definitely to reach out by way of technology, which took me several weeks of learning before I felt comfortable with it. But yeah, so you would hope that younger generation would latch onto it. And I'm happy to see some of the younger generation in my family showing up on the screen once in a while, which is nice. And yeah, I feel very comfortable, but I haven't prayed or thought enough about it to know next steps, but to be comfortable day to day and be thankful that we're here without any big issues. I guess the one challenge over the past years that seems not an issue anymore is the sexuality thing. And when I look back at when we were like together with the other churches in the stadium, I'm pretty sure one of the reasons we're not anymore is because one of the two one or two of the other pastors just wasn't interested anymore. And I think Dale took the brunt of that, and we don't really know how much it really was in effect, but I am delighted with how inclusive. It's not an issue. Everyone is welcome, and we're doing great in that respect, and welcoming others, and joyfully and not fearfully or whatever. So,
Linda?
it's a good church in this climate right now.
Yeah, I think I'm impressed all over again, you know, looking at this and seeing, given we haven't talked at all about, it seems, the state of religion in general, and the period of time when a new type of church took over a lot of people that we might have been interested in our church. I'm not even sure that that is as alive and well now as it was. So it's kind of interesting to think about, and forgive me for saying this, but it almost seems like maybe we need a little task force to look at the situation, you know, what does appeal to families. Mililani's not a growing community anymore. It's a solid community with a particular reputation. I mean, reputation's not the right word.
Identity.
Yeah, you know, and you know, what else? What is out there that we might appeal? What issues are out there that might appeal, that we could, you know, grow our church? I don't think anybody has any objections to growing again, but I wouldn't know the first, you know, how to do it. We still, while we have, I found this out not too long ago, but do you know that what the second largest city in our state is? It's Mililani. At 60,000 or whatever it is bigger than Hilo. It's bigger than, you know, we're the biggest city, and we're a lot different than we were when we started. So I'm starting to think of what we could do. Don't have any specifics, but there's got to be a bunch of people out there that, you know, I mean, we have a big population here. We got a lot of churches, but wonder what we could do to spread God's word according to Lutherans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how do we as the Lutheran movement share God's good news in Christ to our community? Yeah. Sally, were you going to say something? You look like you're going to.
Well, I think it's Mililani is still a community of young families. And I don't go to the 10 o'clock service very often, but there are more young people than I thought there were, you know, young families. And to get those families to come to church and get involved. Back when we got started, I was the queen of fellowship, and we always had things to do: camping, hiking. We had a church
parties.
Three times we had a church camp out. One was at the Salvation Army camp in Wailua, one was in Hauula, and one in Bellows, where we actually camped out and had a service the next day. And, you know, it's like something to attract young people, to get them involved, want to come.
Yeah, what
that is.
And I think part of what we really need to do is keep on keeping on. I mean, we've been a growing church since day one, since Pastor Smith saw Sally working in her garden, and Pastor Dale was walking door to door, and we will continue to be a growing church as long as we're in Hawaii. So I think we need to keep on doing that first, is doing our best to welcome people. Eileen mentioned how welcoming we are. Welcome people with open arms, and welcome them into our group, and take them from wherever they are, and try to help them learn God's word.
In the middle of this
I don't know.
Yeah. You know, right now, finding our way about is probably the best. If we can find our way about well, even as we're thinking about next steps, right? Like Eileen said, let's get better at Zoom. So we're going to try get a new sound box in tomorrow morning, and we're going to remember how we tried the one and it just didn't work that one Sunday. I think Bud, you were texting or somebody, and people were posting on Facebook, we can't hear anything. Pastor Keith, you're garbled more than usual. So so David got a new sound box in, and we're gonna practice it tomorrow before we fire it up. So I think finding our way about in these ongoing circumstances is a first thing, but let's have in mind, and how do we use this tragic pandemic as an opportunity to minister to people and invite them to be part of our worshiping community, our faith community. That, yeah. Eileen.
I couldn't hear you then. You went away from all of a sudden.
None of that?
You're breaking in and out.
I heard.
There's a little fluctuation in the audio here. But you know, you mentioned, Pastor, that we're sort of going to be financially self-sufficient with the preschool and the cell tower and the kidney group. And I see that as part of our mission, as a way of giving back to the community, is providing space. We've got a beautiful campus here, and providing space for the Al-Anon groups and all the associated groups to meet, providing space for the preschool. Yes, they are paying us. They are renting from us. But I don't know that they're paying full market value, and I think that's okay. That we're giving it to them for a slightly reduced rate because it's a give back to the community, and some of those things I think are really crucial. Is how can we help the community?
Well, we sure are collaborating with other nonprofits to make our missions all gel and work together. You know, we really are. It's really a blessing to be the pastor here and have all these. You know, we've got a smaller worshiping group, but we've got all these ministries going, you know, through the Kidney Foundation and the Rainbow School that we can be proud of, I think. The support groups, yeah. Any other thoughts? I see it's 11:31 on my computer clock. Any final words or thoughts from any of you?
You know, one of the outcomes for me of this session was not expected. And that is to have this kind of discussion about where we were, who we are now, and what we want to be in the future. So I don't know what that means, that maybe others would be interested in discussing that, and we could start some kind of new campaign to who are we going to be when we grow up the next 10 years or whatever.
If we choose to grow up, okay. But I'm a guy. Do we ever grow up? So the ladies can't answer that, Bud. You and I, okay. No, one of the things to do is what I've tried to do here is say, tell me a story. What part did you have to play in that? How did you feel about it? And what do we want to try next? And out of those of you who've been on the council, that's kind of how we've done our little planning retreats, is what do we want to try next? And did you notice how we didn't write everything down? We made some notes, and look at how stuff took off. You know, we had some really good stuff take off. So maybe we could be inviting some other people into a Zoom conversation. Or maybe we need to find out if we can have people gather in groups of 5 for worship and talk story worship. You know, the rule says under 50, but let me do some checking on that before we go jumping into it, right? I don't want everybody cited in church for $5,000, but yeah, Linda, that might be a thing for us to sort of get people together and say, let's talk story. And see what emerges from everybody's intentions and ideas and go from there.
And
Sal,
we might find some unknown talents.
I think there's a lot of hidden talent, and that's one of the surprising things when you just sit back and say, who wants to try something? Yeah. I'll bet the variety show and a few other, the trip to Kala Papa and all that were not, I mean, they came up and away you went, right? Any other final thoughts? Sally, Bud, Eileen?
Well, you talked about hidden talents. When Russ played his ukulele a couple years ago, everybody was in shock because they didn't know he knew how to sing. So there are hidden talents out there.
There sure are. Eileen, you have any final thoughts?
Not specifically at this time. But
Okay. Good. Well, thank you for being here. Bud, any final thoughts?
No, I'm talked out. I think you've done a good job of bringing thoughts out from us. Thank you, Pastor.
Yeah. See, every now and then I can shut up. I know I took off a few times, but every now and then I can shut up and let other people talk. So, well, thank you everybody for being here. This has been really fun for me, and not just fun in a way that Linda referenced in terms of, okay, remembering who we are, making sense of where we've come from gives us in the present moment a way of thinking about tomorrow. Bud, you said to me once, we're perpetually under construction, something like that, because people are moving in, moving out, moving in, moving out, right? We're just always under development, I think. I can't remember the exact word you used, but I feel encouraged by this, even in the midst of this pandemic. That's my final thought. As the newbie in the group, I appreciate your stories. I appreciate your insights. I appreciate your wisdom. And I wish blessings on all of us for the next 40 years or however long we want to stick around. Okay.
Can I say one last thing?
You finish it up.
We talked, and I'm the one that has to run. We talked about all the things that we've done in the past, and not a lot about in the most recent past. But it just popped into my mind that we still have it. Because remember, just a year ago, in a period of like 2 months, we totally changed the look of the church. Everybody just pulled together with all kinds of talents and made those chair covers.
Yeah.
It's like a miracle. We still have it.
Yeah, and I think that sort of stuff is what's pulling us through this downtime right now. When I'm shut down time, that I look out on those chairs. There are fewer of them. They're stacked up, but I look out on them and I take hope just looking at the chairs. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Blessings on the rest of your day, and we'll see you in church, however that is. We'll see you in church. Blessings.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.